Hello, you're about to start what I consider one of the most important and impactful labs that are offered in any of my classes, which is casual collecting and leave no trace. I have provided a historical video that talks about why this lab even was conceptualized. But in short, I want to give you some reasons why it's important to me and why I think it should be important to you to do a good job on this lab. First, most of you will end up liking to travel at some point. And I think we all like a good road trip when we can. And if you haven't been able to, you will likely in the future. And since you've learned about some really cool places in this class, you may want to go visit them. Let me give you an example, the Grand Canyon. Or you decide to go to Zion National Park and learn about the crossbeds that I teach you in here. Maybe you decide to go to Yosemite National Park, or maybe you go to some other place, right? That's either a national park, a national forest, whatever type of protected public land it might be. And you're like, well, there's just really cool rock at the Grand Canyon, and it looks like where I took that stop as I was hiking back up, and it matches that rock formation. Let's say it's just a piece of Kaibab limestone, and it would be really cool to have a piece of that at the house. I agree, it would be really cool. However, it's not legal to take it from the national park, ever, without a permit. Same thing with that leaf when you sit down and you're taking a nature break and you see that cool leaf and you're like, oop, I think I just want to keep that for my memory scrapbook. It's not legal either. Let's say that you're walking around on Bureau of Land Management property and you see some petrified wood on the ground. Well, it might be legal to take some of that, especially if you don't have to dig for it and it's a certain size or less. And there's a quantity that you can have per year, believe it or not. But let's say you have to dig for it. That's not okay. But how many people actually know that? Let's say you're walking around that same property and you find arrowheads or pieces of broken pottery that are from some kind of ancient civilization, so it'd be an archaeological find. There are federal regulations that prohibit you from moving those out of place. And that's what I'm trying to have you learn about in this lab. When and if people are found guilty for these types of things, it usually starts off as an innocent mistake. And then if they're not caught over time, or they learn better and they continue their behavior, then they have culpability, which means that they did have prior knowledge and did it anyway. These are all factors that are considered in any kind of investigation. So having worked for a regulatory agency, I can tell you that these entities don't really have much patience for people who claim, I just didn't know. It's your responsibility to know. It is no fun to learn about and read any kind of policy or law. The language used in these laws can be very challenging to understand and can seem very dry, but it doesn't make them any less applicable to you. So again, this applies to you in the fact that you may visit places in the future. And because you took this course, and maybe some others with me or other cool classes in your college career, to say, hey, yeah, I might want a memento from that park that I went and visited. Well, is it legal or is it not? If you have a permit, it always is a good thing to get, by the way. It probably is, but you got to follow your permit guidelines. Did you get that permit? Did you pay for it? Do you have a copy of it? Did you collect within those time frames? You can see where I'm going with it. But the average person does not. They just pull over on some hidden road and start taking stuff. So I'm going to say people are going to come and get you for it. I don't have an answer for that. But I want you to have a clean conscience about what is appropriate and not appropriate. I will also say this. If you're on private property that is your own, you own that stuff. Okay, the only time where that doesn't apply is when you find human remains, obviously. You need to turn that in. But if you're on someone else's private property, you need to be asking permission because they own those materials. And some of the most famous dinosaur fossil cases are predicated on that very thing. So that's why you're learning about it. And I'd ask that you systemically walk through this lab and follow the instructions. Understand there is a reason I'm asking you to make a mock trip. What I mean by a mock trip, almost like a mock trial, where you're going through a series of steps and with a group of people. And the key is that you must choose people that you trust. I want you to feel what I felt when people betrayed me and realize that it can happen, especially with people who you thought would know better, people that wouldn't do these things. When people are backed into a corner, sometimes they can make decisions or justify their decisions in a way that may seem okay to them, but it's not at the end of the day. And that's what I'm hoping that you'll come away with as you go through this process, because it's a painful process if you do it from start to finish of the process of someone stealing dinosaur bones and petrified wood and the scenarios. And not only are you going to learn about definitions for these rules, you're going to see how they're applied in real life at real locations. And that's the takeaway that I'm wanting you to have. I'm also going to ask that you learn about some egregious cases of things that people have done that are fairly famous cases at some of our protected lands like Yosemite National Park, Grand Canyon, Zion. And I think you will be floored in a not a good way that people are capable of such actions. And you need to think about that because is that, could that, or was that ever you or someone that you know? And what I want to have happen is that from this day forward, it not be. I'm not saying it has been, but you probably know someone that's picked up something in a park, a national park, a city, or a state park that's owned by a different person than yourself, or different entity, and they took something with them. Hopefully you've not seen anybody do some of these really horrible things like painting all over rock formations or defacing them, things that are truly vandalism and considered in some cases to be felonies. And so you want to be careful on the actions that you take in these parks. I truly appreciate the time you're putting into this lab. I know that the reading of the laws is not fun. And I also understand that it may seem a bit confusing, the difference between the various types of federal public lands, Native American lands, state trust. That's the whole point, is that they are not an easy interpretation. And that's why you need to be careful whenever you travel and you're picking up stuff to take home. Rocks, fossils, minerals, things that look like ancient civilization stuff like arrowheads and points and spears and pottery, and just know that there are laws and there's rules in place for these for a very good reason. I appreciate your time. Even if you've done this before for a different class for me, you will learn something new when you do it again. Because when you start to really look at it, the first time you learn it, it's like, okay, I kind of get this. But when you do it again, you start to really begin to internalize what you learn. And I find that the students who have multiple classes with me, this is one of the labs, they say, yeah, it made a difference. I learned a lot that I never knew, and I passed it on to my friends, my families, and coworkers. Thanks so much. Bye.